I'm often asked about, and sometimes criticized for, being a religious person. The entire day is full of opportunities for prayer and mindfulness. The notion of mindfulness is a constant exercise for Jews, and while we may hone our mindfulness with an awareness of something that we call God, for some people they use the notion of the universe at large, or the love that binds us all, or a mystical concept of oneness. So you can be mindful even if you are an intellectual or philosophically oriented person. I don't feel that my scientist self is compromised at all by participating in things like meditation, yoga, deep breathing, and even prayer. Do I have issues with religion? Heck yeah. Do I have a strong distaste for the patriarchal flair of Judeo-Christianity? Yes, ma'am. Do I have concerns that certain religious beliefs and political leanings that are in line with those religious beliefs might contribute to a world of hate and destruction rather than one of love and unity? Absolutely. I am grateful to the approach that my religion has taken to increase mindfulness. I'm grateful that I can connect with this trend in popular culture while still having it be completely consistent with the ancient religion that is mine.
For the most part, our sense of what is and is not scientific itself is a sort of aesthetic judgment. Sometimes I ask members of my audience, does this sound like science to you? And the erudite members of my audience, this is in fact enough to get them to pause and reflect that what they're listening to could not possibly be a legitimate scientific argument. And sometimes I invoke that kind of aesthetic judgment going the other way. I'm sometimes asking my audience, I'm presenting them with MRI scans showing human brains and brain damage, and I'm quoting peer-reviewed scientific articles that are quite difficult to understand. And I ask them, look, even if you can't understand all of the Latin terms that I've just read out to you, even if you can't really follow this scientific argument, can't you pick up on the sense, on the feeling, on the aesthetic of this being legitimate science? That what you're reading here is not a sales pitch, that it's not just a rumor made up on the internet, that it's not something a bunch of hippie teenagers came up with as a marketing ploy to sell purified water that'll purify your soul. No, that this is somehow in the same sense that you can tell if someone's gay or straight. You got gaydar. Somehow during our lives, we develop some sense that may not be entirely rational of what is and what is not science. The clip I'm about to play for you. Does this sound like science? Does this even sound like something a legitimate historian would ever say?
So how does an ancient religion like Judaism feel relevant in the 21st century? Well, Judaism in its original state was actually designed to introduce a concept of mindfulness.
You will be shocked to learn that when she refers to the original state of Judaism, she is referring to the 1990s and a fad that began in the United States of America, not in ancient Israel, of incorporating bastardized elements of ancient Theravada Buddhism into modern Judaism.
2,000 years later.
But I ask you, fundamentally, her claim that the Buddhist doctrine of mindfulness is the original teaching of Judaism. She's not claiming that she can quote Moses. She's not claiming that she can quote Abraham. She's not claiming that she can quote a much later author like Maimonides. No, that this is secretly and mystically the original teaching of Judaism. And you know, this is the sort of thing where you just might suspect that you could just do a very brief Google search and find out that this is complete nonsense and debunk it, and in fact find peer-reviewed articles like the one quoted on screen here by people with PhDs or some degree of academic respectability that do indeed establish that, yes, this just was a modern American invention, very obviously stolen from Buddhism by people who couldn't even read ancient scriptural languages of Buddhism like Pali and Sanskrit. You're just one or two Google searches away. And yet, why is it that people in the audience don't take the moment to do that Google search? Why is it that they don't stop to question? I think it's because they didn't take that first step, which may be an aesthetic judgment, not entirely rational, of questioning, is this science? Is this even history? Is she, in fact, swimming in the same shark tank with real and verifiable facts? And if not, what am I listening to? Might it be that I'm listening to something that's much more like a modern fable?
For me, practicing Judaism means committing to a structure of intention and meaning, which brings my life mindfulness and purpose. How do you incorporate mindfulness into your life? Do you do it as part of a religious tradition or separate from a religious tradition? What works for you and what doesn't? Tell me in the comments below. Like this video if you like it, share this video, please subscribe to my channel, go to groknation.com for more of my thoughts on religion. See you next time.
The situation of Judaism in the 21st century is peculiar in that its proponents, the people who continue to make excuses for or propound Judaism as a religion in the modern world, can neither simply defend the ancient text as the source of their religion, as something that defines what their religion is and ought to be, nor can they openly espouse their religion as something that departs from, freely contradicts the text, that it doesn't rely on the authority of these ancient texts. You notice here the portion of the translation highlighted in red. What do you think could possibly be the Hebrew term? One and the same word in Hebrew that two different translators rendered into English in such a radically incommensurable way. Yeah, well, it would be impossible to guess. This is in fact part of the fascinating historical episode of the biblical God having a wife called Asherah.
The Canaanites were also polytheistic. Of the many gods the Canaanites worship, three in particular are important to the rest of the story. They are El Elyon, whose name means literally God Most High, and who is believed to have been the father of the other gods; Asherah, El Elyon's wife; and Baal, who is both god of storms and fertility. In the English translation of the Bible, the Hebrews are presented as choosing between the Lord, Baal, and Asherah. How could the Hebrews be such idiots? Why wouldn't they worship the one God of all creation? The picture looks different when the God you're supposed to be worshiping is Yahweh Sabaoth, which means the God of the armies. Yahweh started as basically the Hebrew version of the Greek god Ares. No wonder he was obsessed with war and death in the Old Testament. That was back when he was still just their god of war. Now the picture made sense. Like the ancient Greeks, the Hebrews had a pantheon of gods they worshipped, or at least the gods Yahweh, Baal, and Asherah. We have archaeological evidence of the polytheistic nature of early Israelite culture.
And no, this controversy doesn't just involve a few isolated portions of biblical text. Asherah is mentioned at least 40 times in the Bible, and believe it or not, new instances are still being discovered because they're concealed in plain sight, as was this example we were just looking at, where it gets reinterpreted and misinterpreted in various bizarre ways. Because, in fact, we do not merely have evidence that Asherah was part of the biblical text, we also have evidence of the attempts of later authors, editors, and scribes trying to conceal or minimize the presence of Asherah, as in general they were trying to conceal and minimize the significance of polytheism throughout the ancient text.
How can we sing the songs of Yahweh while in a foreign land? Ezekiel, a prophet who arose among the exiled Hebrews, expressed how alienated the Hebrews had become. He too blamed their plight on the Hebrew people for a lack of devotion to Yahweh. It was then, at a time when the Hebrew people seemed most crushed, at a time when it seemed certain that the cult of Yahweh would surely die, it instead did something that religion has done throughout history in order to survive. It changed. A new author, who scholars call Second Isaiah, arose, and his words were appended to those of the first Isaiah. I am the first and I am the last. Besides me, there is no God. monotheism was born. From this new monotheistic culture, the priestly source P arises. Israelite history is rewritten once again. Exodus is rewritten by P to say that the El Shaddai worshipped by Abraham and the Yahweh worshipped by Moses were the same God. Any references to El Elyon are explained by P as merely different names for Yahweh. The entire book of Leviticus is authored. Genesis 1 is crafted as an improved monotheistic version of the Babylonian account of creation. 2nd Isaiah rewrites Babylonian myths that were attributed to Marduk, such as his defeat of the dragon Tiamat, attributing them instead to Yahweh. The Torah is rebranded by P to look as if it had always been monotheistic.
So when you recognize that the source text is in this sense so fundamentally contestable, that it is so open to interpretation, and that very few of those interpretations could be harmless for people in the modern world. If you make the decision to raise your children in the faith of Judaism, you are handing them a book that has a proven track record of being interpreted in a dangerous way, in a manner that may devastate your own children's lives, or that may cause your children to go on to do terrible things, ruining other people's lives. You know that this book and this religion has this potential. No matter how pious and postmodern your personal reinterpretation of the religion might be, you should recognize that placing divine authority and transcendental significance in such a text is inherently irresponsible, dangerous, and morally wrong.
I just talk about the politicians that don't do what they gotta do and the powerful people that watch people suffer and die. I want to save dark-skinned babies from going to prison and wasting their lives. That's what I'm saying.
I can still see dudes following trends. Monolith will make you cool look like imaginary friends. It's the truth and I can back it. Cause after this touches a session, all these other dudes are looking reenactment. You can't rap with shit that'll blow your amp with. Make you tell like a leg cramp fit when I'm off some damn shit. I mean, really. People like to disrespect my crew, but the fact is that you know my name and I don't know you.